So I'll tell you a little history of myself because, nobody is more interested in yourself than you. I can tell you.
Janice Swinton was born in Washington, D.C., but grew up on a farm in Edwards, Mississippi. She moved to Kansas City after graduating high school and got married, attended junior college, and earned a bachelor's degree in journalism from the University of Kansas. She went overseas and worked as a missionary with her husband in various countries over a period of 10 years, from spreading the gospel in Costa Rica to smuggling Bibles into China. She studied abroad in Africa, researching Black history and biblical history with her mother, who was a Black historian. She is a published author, having written a number of books on both subjects, as well as an ordained minister. She worked in healthcare in various managerial positions and as a study coordinator for NIH-sponsored HIV and CV studies in Jackson, Mississippi. She moved to Maine with her husband and worked at Maine General until she was called to open a restaurant. Mrs. Swinton and her husband ran the Freedom Cafe in Waterville for about 10 years until they decided to move back to Mississippi to focus on Mr. Swinton's health. He passed away around 10 years later, and Mrs. Swinton moved back to Maine. She is now a dorm parent at MCI.
Because I wanted to write like my mom, and I was also interested in Black history as well as biblical history, I started writing, and I think I've written like 5 or 6 books. They're mostly on Amazon, and some of them are sold pretty good. And it's about Black history, biblical history, the history in this country with slavery, the whole idea of inequality. I also write about women because I think they have been likewise not treated properly, second-class citizen, and that goes even deeper when you go white women to Black women. There's a great big divide, and it is very infuriating to people. I don't support. I do not support man's theology or their discrimination or rhetoric regarding who I am, which is why I did research. I got into books. I got to the library. I'm like, yeah, okay, I hear what you're saying, but that doesn't fit me. I'm gonna find out for myself, and then I'm gonna write my own history, okay? And you can say what you want, but I got my own history. There we go. You got to make something less than you are to be able to treat it in the way that the slaves were treated. You want to survive. You want to survive. You won't become who you want to be. Your dreams are going to get waylaid because someone's going to tell you, you can't do that. But we don't live in a society that like different. We live in a society that wants to make everything the same. And we're not homogenous. God made us individually. We're not, all the different races and nations and tongues and tribes. It makes for if we were just one dimensional, like everybody's the same, oh man, we'd miss a lot of inventions. We'd miss a lot of culture. We'd miss a lot of history. We'd miss a lot of everything. But collectively, there is purpose. It's a lot of broken people. A lot of broken people. And while you may not be able to put the pieces together, you can help them hold on to them until they can get it together. So your heart, okay, our spirit, our soul, our heart, our emotions kind of go in the washing machine and throw a ring. And whatever comes out is what comes out. I would advise kids, don't try to grow up too fast. But who breaks people? We break people by how we treat them, what we say, our communication. Isn't that amazing? I think we've forgotten how to be human. And because we have forgotten that, people aren't communicating how they feel. In fact, they can't figure out who they are, because there's so many voices in there. I think that chatter is just too much. Don't become a clone.
Peter Snow grew up in Greenville, Maine, next to Moosehead Lake. His father was a Maine guide, hunting, fishing, and cutting wood, and his mother worked in a mill. Shortly after graduating high school, he received a letter drafting him into the military, but on the advice of the recruiter, he enlisted at that time to minimize his chances of being sent to Vietnam. He was trained as a surveyor and was sent to Vietnam by boat, becoming very sick along the way. He was injured on the left wrist by mortar during his first tour. When they returned after 11 months, they were verbally abused by protest groups, including those led by Jane Fonda. When he found out a friend of his was returning to Vietnam, he decided to go back as well. He was heavily wounded on March 9, 1968, and left Vietnam. He served the rest of his tour in California after recovering. His brother, Greenville's first four-letter athlete, drowned at the age of 17. Mr. Snow earned a degree from the University of Maine at Machias and began teaching in Pittsfield. He also coached football for many years. He has 4 accomplished children, and his wife, Linda, is a music teacher.
So we landed in a place called Vung Tau, South Vietnam. I said, please shoot me, because I'm sick. They called us everything, baby killers, warmongers. So wearing your uniform was negative. And it was work. 12 of us veterans were at Machias at the same time. 12 of us graduated. 12 of us graduated, and I will say this proud, with honors. It was work. I mean, many times they say, let's go party. Okay, I got this paper to write, or I got this test coming up. We grew up as friends. We didn't have the TV that you have today. We were always just out playing. Nostalgia is something that older people can hold on to. And the thing is, we got to understand, it's not this time now. It's changed. The nostalgia growing up in the late 40s and 50s. And then when you get to the 60s, that changed.
Yeah.
So everything changes, but some of the good things. The word generosity to some people means just money. You are very generous because you've got 10 million you could give. Well, what's a poor person got for generosity to give themselves? An hour here, 10 minutes here. I will tell you what I don't think kids have today that we had. Somebody said, no. Common sense. Is that a old person's opinion? Yes, it is. But that's me. Be involved. Be involved in your community or your area that you live in a positive way. Keep an open mind, right? But be involved in a positive way. Kids sometimes get too much negative towards them. The old people like my son. Why don't they do this, and that? I saw this boy doing this. Okay. Having fun. Something you can attach yourself to. Art club. There must be some students that really have a hard time school, but love art. What else can you do but try? Do we not always succeed? Young kids are our future. Future looks good.
Carol Willett was raised primarily by her great-grandparents in Waterville, Maine. Her aunt, who also lived with them, was a first-grade teacher and was the only one in the family who drove a car. In fact, Carol would sometimes go out with boys in high school only if they would let her drive their cars to get some practice. She began working about 30 hours per week in stores in downtown Waterville her junior year. By the time she graduated from high school, she was dating the man who would be her first husband, and they married soon after. Later on, her husband was transferred, and they moved to Pittsfield. They had 2 children together. During this period, she attended night school and took classes at Thomas College. She took on a career in human resources, working with her husband in his business and later working for Chimbro for 30 years. Additionally, she has illustrated 2 picture books. She was married to her loving second husband for 18 years until he passed away. These days, Carol is involved in the Arts Club, a community service group in town, and the Friends of the Library. She also has been painting quite often and is taking violin lessons as well as playing pickleball occasionally with friends.
I guess being with I started dating my husband we were together 42 years when I was 15, and I think I would not advise being that steady with one person. It limits your your life. I think I would have done things definitely a little different. But what I do realize too, if I did them differently, I wouldn't be here. Use your time wisely. I think that's another thing. You want to have fun and, but I think too when you're a teenager or young. So I'm almost 80 and you're never too old to learn. And I hear this, my sister always says, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Well, I have news, you can. Because if you don't change with the times, you're going to be home sitting in front of the TV and not doing as much, and it's good to keep busy. So just because someone is very intelligent, it doesn't mean that they have common sense. Her sister she said, I want to remember her the way she was. Now, if we all thought that, we would be dying somewhere on the side of the road and nobody, you know what I'm saying? Yes, it's hard to watch someone die, but when you're in that condition, you want someone to be with you. You want people. I've seen some very, where everyone stood around the bed and sang prayer maybe and holding on to the person, and that's the wonderful thing. And then so you don't have the regrets afterwards. You do everything you can in life to help other people and to be there for your family, and that is so important. I listen to these people, how they would do this differently, they'd do that differently, they'd marry a different person. But if you really, really think about that, your whole life would have taken a completely different turn. I mean, you wouldn't really know what you were missing, but I'm happy the way everything went.
Pete Viggy was born in Caribou, Maine, and moved to Pittsfield when he was 8 years old. He soon started working as a paperboy, with 3 separate paper routes from different companies at the same time. Upon finding out that he would not be able to go to Maine Maritime Academy, his college of choice since he had not taken 2 years of a foreign language, Mr. Viggy went to one of his paper customers, who happened to be the Latin teacher at MCI. She and the Dean of Academics decided to allow him to take Latin 1 and Latin 2 simultaneously his senior year. He was successful in Latin, graduated from MCI, and attended Maine Maritime. However, after working as a merchant marine for a short time, he returned to construction work, in which industry he had worked summers since he was 13, because he found it more challenging and enjoyable. He rose through the ranks at Chimbro and was selected to lead a project in Maryland, building a dam across the Potomac. Mr. Viggy eventually became CEO and president of Chimbro, and has now stepped back to be chairman of the board. His son Andy is now CEO and president.
The only way I could differentiate myself was working harder than anybody else. I was not a good athlete. I wasn't probably, one might say, a good student. I never got an A in my life. But there's one thing I could do to differentiate myself, and that was working hard. The words out of Susanna was, I can't. You could have heard a pin drop in the class. Mrs. Earl turned around on her heels and went to the blackboard. And she wrote in full-size letters about 3 feet high, all the way across the blackboards. Never, 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 3 times, say can't. She turned around and there was complete silence in the room, and for 40 minutes she never stopped. She repeated the 3 nevers, say can't, and said, if you say those words, you will fail. You will not only fail in this class, you will fail in life. Never, ever say it again. She went on for 40 minutes communicating that one's mindset and attitude, taking that approach, will bring failure. She shaped my life. That lady is my hero. She's the lady that made me who I am. And that's the important thing that people don't understand about educators. That's the effect and the impact an educator can have on a student or anyone. I study people. And people, to me, are the most important asset we have. And so I can learn from people by watching them, by trying to understand them, and asking a lot of questions. And when people, regardless of who they are, if they call themselves a leader, their number one focus should be focused on the well-being of the people, gaining their confidence, their trust, and getting out of the way and let them run. And challenge them to get better and improve constantly. I have every confidence in saying that because I've seen it over and over and over again. And sometimes it comes as a result of situations that occur that are not positive. Kind of like making a mistake and acknowledging the mistake and taking responsibility for the mistake and improving from it and never allowing it to happen again. You know, when you see something you don't like, you say to yourself, I'm not going to behave that way. If you see a behavior that is positive and affirmative, that gives you and identifies a behavior that is positive and allows the situation to progress and be positive. We got to respect one another, regardless of the backgrounds, where we grew up, how we gained our knowledge and our skill and our education and all. I believe that I've been gifted with opportunity, but along with that comes a responsibility. And that's responsibility is the responsibility to give back. Believe in yourself. Number one, believe in yourself. Believe in yourself. Doesn't matter what you look like, doesn't matter whether you're a good student or a bad student. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter where you grew up. Doesn't matter, any of that doesn't matter. It starts with you and what you believe. And believe in yourself. But most of all, it also will impact you in terms of the way you interact and treat people with respect. Ask questions. Don't make statements. Seek first to understand, then be understood. Win the hearts and mind of people by demonstrating that they can trust you, by demonstrating that you respect them. If you want to be respected, respect others. Just because it's never been done before doesn't mean that it can't be done.
That would be my advice.